There you go.
I'm sorry.
That's a new one.
Right, okay. Oh no. Who's got Alexa? Who's got Alexa in their room?
Well, that was
you've got horrible synthetic voices now on Zoom.
Oh, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
Anyway, no more real voice there is than Father Ross, who is going to speak to us tonight about his impending ordination and his preparations for it, and really anything else we want to quiz him about. It isn't often you get the chance to quiz someone preparing for holy orders, and tonight's the night. So have a hard think about the sort of questions you might ask. Just a couple of things maybe to kick us off and get us thinking. If priesthood is about sacrifice, how does that work itself out in the life of a priest, and how does Father Ross see that? I'm completely blindsiding him because he's no idea I'm going to say this, and it's a measure of my esteem for the man that he can actually deal with any curveballs I may throw his way. But that's the sort of question you might like to ask, and really anything else you would ever have wanted to know about priesthood but were too scared to ask. If I disappear and you see a smiling picture of me, it's because I'm eating my tea, which has just arrived. But I am here, and I am, sharp-eared as ever, Father, so you won't get anything past me. And yes, I am recording.
Yes.
So without further ado, Father Ross, thank you so much, and the floor is most definitely yours.
Brilliant. Can you give me the ability to screen share, please?
Yep.
Wonderful. So, as you all know, I'm being ordained in a few weeks' time as priest, which is a very scary thing. Not least for myself, but also for the church. What has she done? But a lot has gone into this, and it really has been a life's journey to get to this point. And so to begin with, I'm going to share with you with some images as well, part of that life journey from a 6-year-old boy up to the present day. So as I share my screen, and hopefully all of this will work as well, can you all see this image?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
My journey begins as a 6-year-old boy attending this particular church here. And this is another Holy Trinity. This is Holy Trinity in Boston, a charismatic evangelical parish, which I, as an obedient son, went along with my mother, who started going after the death of her father. She went to see her doctor because she was struggling with her grief. To which her doctor said, well, you've got 2 choices. See a psychiatrist or see a priest. And so she went what she thought was going to be the cheaper option and went to the church. It was in these very early years that I was brought up, got a deep insight into the Bible through Sunday schools, and really had a very strong fellowship and rapport among my peers. This then carried on as I grew older through holiday clubs, to which I attended in the hall on the side, which then led to me leading Sunday schools and holiday clubs and all sorts of different youth events. And it was around at the age of 14 that I was sat in church in the middle of a Sunday service. And I thought, I could do that. that's something which, yeah, I think that's for me. But didn't really understand much about it. And possibly didn't take it all that seriously to begin with either. As you can probably tell with, if it will allow me to get to my next picture. So this is the inside of the church as well, all very vibrant and lively. Just to note, the man in the middle there, he was the youth worker at the time. And he was somebody which really encouraged me when I first had these raising thoughts about, yeah, maybe this is for me. And he basically opened up many opportunities for me to lead holiday clubs, also a Friday night event amongst my peers called Faithful Friday, where we just spoke about scripture and different topics and themes, which was absolutely wonderful. But yes, as you could tell, I wasn't possibly taking it all that seriously. This was me at a fancy dress, sporting the Jonathan Van Tam tie. I am allowed. We are both old boys of the same school, so yes. So that's my connection to a famous face we have all seen recently on our TV screens. And there I am again. And this is me at one of our holiday clubs. Yes, I am Captain Underpants, hence, well, if you can recognize me at that too. The hair seems to have migrated from the top of my head to my chin. But yes, absolutely wonderful group of people I was surrounded with. And there I am once again. This was me before I started shaving. And I still have the pink bow somewhere. But things didn't really start to become serious within my own thought process until I started going to university at the wonderful Bishop Grosseteste in Lincoln, which not only houses a very fine university and a very fine cathedral, but also a very fine football club, as Father Damien will find out on Sunday. It was during my 3 years where I got deeply involved with the chaplaincy. And I saw one chaplain leave and another chaplain come in. Still very much attending evangelical churches. And it was when the second chaplain came in, a wonderful priest in Father Peter Green, where I had a deep insight, a sort of a crash course induction into this wonderful flavor of the Church of England called Anglo-Catholicism. And he opened my eyes as to what a priest would be. That a priest was, yes, there for the preaching, as I had seen in my early years of growing up, but also a different insight. A priest is there who administers the sacraments, who is there for people in a particular context. And for him, that was in a university as a chaplain, but also opened my eyes to the priest there as somebody who celebrates the sacraments, me receiving the sacraments, for there to be that as our sole focus. That has the paramount importance in our liturgy and worship. So absolutely wonderful person, and he really is somebody which I look to as someone who spearheaded my direction of travel. And that direction of travel brought me outside of the comfort and the flatness of Lincolnshire, minus the hill known as steep, to the city of London. And most notably this church here in Tottenham called St. Bennet Fink. And I spent 4 wonderful years here, 2 as a pastoral assistant and 2 as a voluntary basis as I was teaching. And here I was fully immersed into what an Anglo-Catholic priest in a parish does. So I had seen what a priest does in a university, but this was the crash course. What does a priest do in a parish? And so getting that wonderful practical experience and insight to be a part of daily prayers, which we're all now involved with. If we watch the live streams on Facebook, being part of that rhythm, that pattern of prayer, which really bookended my days. Here, serving, pastoral visiting, yes, keeping up with my experience of children's work, so writing Sunday school plans, leading some of them as well. We even did a holiday club there. We even trialed messy church and did some conventional cousin sweaty church, which takes on a far more sporting aspect as opposed to arts and crafts. It's just a shame about the name sweaty church. Doesn't really flow off the tongue all that well. And there I am, very fresh-faced when I first arrived in the parish. And I don't know what it was, but maybe it was slight stress, but you'll eventually see the beard growing and the hair disappearing on the top of my head. There I am, looking all very proud and happy there. And it was during my time in Tottenham where it was my time to go off to a selection panel, which everybody ordained has to go through 3 grueling days where they assess you on all types of things. So after 2 years in Tottenham, I went and then get the message back that I was unsuccessful on the first round of trying. And that really took me back a little bit, because at every point in the journey is me stopping it, me not taking it probably as seriously as what I should earlier on in life. To me, could have gone straight after university, but I thought, no, I want to get a bit more experience behind me. Could have gone in my first year of being in Tottenham, and it was a matter of, no, I'm still pretty comfortable here. I still want to build up that bank of resource. And I thought at the end of my second year, I was already there. And then it was somebody else which said no. And there's many words which, if I say them, given this is going up onto YouTube, it will be demonetized and not all that palatable. So but I guess you can understand the frustrations which I went through. It was all pretty rubbish. And it was at that moment where I thought, maybe it's not all about me. Maybe I need a bit more prayer, a bit more study, a bit more thought, and a bit more conversation with people as well, who are going through the journey, who have been through the journey. And it was really that first no which realigned my focus. What really is a priest? And who am I? Am I so called to be a priest in God's church? What is God's plan for me? And I believed in myself, yes, I was being called to be a priest. But did I really believe that God was really challenging me, really calling me to this? So after deep thought, deep prayer, deep reading and study, I go back again, and this time they say yes. Fantastic. The work doesn't end there, though, because I end up at this place, which will be familiar to some of us here. This is St. Stephen's House, Oxford, where I spent 3 years as studying. These 3 years really shaped and molded me as a person. I still remember the very first sermon we had by the principal, and it was these 3 questions. What is the church? Who is Jesus Christ? What is a priest? And we was told to think about those questions every single day. What is the church? Who is Jesus Christ? What is a priest? And that alongside study, being in community with other people who are on the same journey, you're sort of torn apart. It almost breaks you down so you can be reassembled. As if God has us in his hands and we're just clay. And he molds us. And he molds us into people who will go forward to serve in parishes, in communities, to be molded into the person which God has called us to be, so we can best serve him and serve his people. Part of being in college meant obviously serving. There I am swinging another Furable. I didn't have the opportunity to name that one. And there I am swinging a Furable for Corpus Christi with another deacon in our diocese, Father Glenn, who will be ordained priest a week after me. So it's good that I've got a few friends from college still with me. But yeah, I found my time at St. Stephen's House challenging, difficult at times, but also fantastic. And I think I came out a better person for those 3 years. Which leads us to the 26th of September 2020. After all of this time of preparation, of journey, of prayer, of study, of conversation, of the ups and the downs of the journey, the bishop lays his hands on me and calls me to the office of the work of a deacon, which, I guess, to begin with, there was sort of a sigh of relief. I've got there eventually, especially with everything being delayed with the pandemic. It's a matter of, there's a relief. We've finally got to this point. But there's still many more points to come. All well and good having the bishop lay his hands on you. What are you going to do about it? What's the journey going to go going forward? So here I am in our parishes, and it's been an unconventional year as a deacon. It's certainly not what I have expected. Today, being out for the very first pastoral visits since starting here, and yet in my head, starting many years ago of what life would be as a curate, it would be, well, the bread and butter of what we do is pastoral visiting, to go in meet people. And today's been the first day we've been able to do it. It's been very strange. And again, it's been a matter of looking back at my journey. God's been in control, whether we realize it at the time or not. When we look back, hindsight with its 2020 vision, at least I have seen, this is where God has been in control. And maybe I'll look back on this last year as a deacon and think, yeah, maybe this is what was meant to be for me in my life. It certainly has opened the doors and my eyes to a vision in our parishes. We've sort of been forced to go online. The fact that we're meeting on Zoom is part of that. But I think it's also been a way in which has united our three parishes in which it hasn't done before. The fact that we can all be together on screen together. I can look back at one of our very first building faith sessions all together here in screens, and I can't quite put into words quite yet as to what a privilege it's been to be part of that journey, but being able to walk alongside all of you as well and hear your stories has certainly filled me with a lot of comfort. And whilst we've not been able to meet physically in the way in which I would have liked, at least we've had an almost happy substitute. And I feel that it's not been wasted. There has been some encouragement, and I don't know what all of you feel about that, whether you found this beneficial or not, but I've certainly found it of great encouragement. And so back to ordination and that important day, which will happen in just a few weeks' time, where I'll be ordained on the 19th of June at St. Stephen's, have my first Mass at Holy Trinity the following day on the 20th, and my first votive Mass at St. Martin's on the 22nd of June. What's this journey been like, and what am I doing in this journey as well? I stop sharing the screen. Firstly, I'll talk about my feelings towards it. It's exciting, but it's scary. And there's a sense of unworthiness about it as well. Earlier on, I think as I was approaching my very first election conference, I probably wasn't ready because I didn't believe it myself. I didn't believe God was calling me to this fully. I had a sense, yes, he was calling me, but I don't think I really believed it in myself. And I think as I've grown and matured, it's now become, yes, I'm confident God has called me to this, but I still don't know why. I don't feel worthy. And it's that realization this is done by grace, by God's grace alone. And trusting in his plan in my life. It's exciting though, because I feel that I am being able to live out that calling which God has set on my heart. One of those questions I had in those 3-day panels, those arduous, terrible things, was, what makes you think you're ordained? And I said, every time I talk about it, there's a burning sensation in my heart. And that flame never dies out. It only grows stronger every time I talk about it. And you talk to all of the clergy, they'll have different experiences about what it meant for them. But that was mine. For mine, it was that burning sensation in the heart which never died down every time I spoke about it. And that was basically me realizing deeper within myself, yeah, this is actually a God thing here. What am I doing to be as well prepared as what I can be? Setting a time in the day to pray. This is not something I can do by my own steam. That this is all God. This is all God working through me. I'm reading. Tomorrow, I'll start rereading a bit of Balthasar. I've been reading other books as well on priesthood, and really getting sort of a much more theological background as to what I'm entering into. Conversations with other priests, those who are very new, and those who have had a bit more experience. What have their journeys been like? What can I learn from them? What are things which they have found helpful on their journey? So prayer, reading, conversations. But I'm also a very active person. I am one of those kinesthetic learners. I much prefer to do things. And being amongst all of you, I think at this moment in time, that has been the greatest preparation I could have ever had. Because at every point since my arrival here, I have felt that wave of prayer which Father Damien first spoke about when he was all praying for me as I was going to be ordained as deacon. I've felt that wave of prayer continue, even up to this day. And your support and your encouragement at this time has been wonderful and fabulous. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster in a few weeks' time. My hand's not quite shaking with nerves as of yet. Maybe that'll come 24 or 48 hours beforehand. But as you've seen, it's been a long journey to this point. One thing I will also say is once the bishop lays his hands on my head on the 19th of June, that's not the end of the story, because my journey continues. It's not a matter of they're ordained priests and everything's completed. The vocation story doesn't end. Last time I led this session, it was on Vocation Sunday. And us all having vocations in our lives. And we can receive a vocation when we're 6 years old or 96 years old. God calls us in his time to different particular things. And we have multiple vocations in our lives, and they all come around at different points. For me, this is my vocation, but we all have our own vocations. Sunday, we had the Feast of Pentecost. where the Holy Spirit descended on those disciples in the upper room, and they were able to communicate to all of those around them in languages which they did not understand. And we can debate, we can have those theological discussions maybe another time as to, was it the spirit of tongues as in the language the angels speak, or did they just get a language test course for dummies? And miraculously, they had their, that they could all speak Mandarin and whatever at a click of the fingers. But the one thing which the Holy Spirit did on that day was it allowed these disciples to communicate the love and the truth of Jesus Christ. And that continues to this day. For everyone who receives the Holy Spirit has that within them. And we're all called to preach that truth and that love in different ways. For me, it is to be a priest. For you, you know your own context. And maybe God has revealed that to you already. Maybe he has, and you've not quite worked it out for yourselves. Or maybe you are still searching for that answer. But take encouragement from the day of Pentecost, that when the Spirit came, it gave them that confidence to boldly proclaim the good news. And we all do it in our different ways. And this is the way in which I have been called to do it. And I feel thankful that I get to share that alongside all of you. So I've spoken for far too long. Now it's my chance to open up the floor. And if you have any questions for me, then now is your opportunity.
Life is a roller coaster.
Yes.
I don't know whether it was deliberate with the way you did your presentation just now, but you said as part of that, you felt as though that was a job that you could do, or words to that effect.
Yeah.
That was a job that you wanted to do. And then the big change in terms of calling came after the 3-day rejection at the assessment. Is that the point really when the question of calling really came into the forefront, where you needed to really look at it differently in terms of it being a calling against something that you wanted to do? And also, as I say, life is a roller coaster. The journey goes on. You are full of fire now, but life is a long time normally. Have you considered where the fire might not be in your belly, with you quite the same as it is now? Loss of faith possibly might creep in somewhere down the line, and will you be prepared for that? And what are your thoughts? And I know it's impossible from where you are now, as how you might deal with that.
Yes. So to answer your first question about seeing it as a job, and then after the 3-day rejection, that reassessment of seeing it as a calling. I think as I started to understand what priesthood is, as a child, I saw it just as preaching. As a matter of, yeah, I could do that. I didn't really give it any second thought, because that was just a tradition of the church I was in. Holy Communion was just seen as a mild inconvenience, to put it blunt. And I guess a part of me saw it as a job. Even when I started in Tottenham, I sort of saw it as a job, and it was something to fulfill. And I think after coming back from that first selection conference, it was very much, this isn't a job. This is my entire life. This is something which will shape me as a person. But it's also not something I do. It's also something I become. And it was at that moment where I sort of had to shift my focus, make it less about me, but more, who does God want me to be? It's not about what I want. It's what does God want for me? So getting rid of that selfishness about it, I think I might have creeped in. Maybe that's something they picked up on in my first selection conference. That's why I needed that time of prayer, that time of being away from it as well. And it was after that rejection, I was straight out of university, straight into a parish, thinking this is one-way street now. And I think even being outside, so I was 2 years as a pastoral assistant. I continued on a voluntary basis, but I was teaching in those following 2 years. And being in a surrounding which wasn't church also helped me grow as a person. And I think that ties into your second question about that fire in my heart, in my belly. I needed that separation away from the church, not completely, but in partiality, to really focus in as to, is this something I really, really believe I'm being called into? Absence makes the heart grow fonder, so to say. I mean, I loved my time teaching. Made many friends. Hopefully transformed the lives of many children alongside that as well. But it was that burning desire. This is okay for a short amount of time. But it's not really where my heart is truly set. So that gave me confidence. Yeah, this is God placing onto my heart. He wants me to be a priest in his church. But that fire, it will go up and down. Depends how much you want to turn the gas. And there have been moments in my life which I haven't spoken about, because if I spoke about everything, well, I'll be occupying at least the next 10 sessions. So, but yeah, in terms of I mean, we can never predict, but we can look back on the past and learn from it. And I remember 10 years ago, there was a moment in my life where I just questioned my faith completely. I had the opportunity to become an ambassador for the Holocaust Education Trust. And as part of that preparation, I went to Auschwitz, Auschwitz I and Auschwitz-Birkenau. And Birkenau in itself 44,000 acres. As you enter those famous gates along the rail lines, you look at the horizon and you still don't see the end of the concentration camp. 7 villages were destroyed in its construction, just to give an idea of the size of this place. It's the size of zones 1 and 2 put together of London. Vast. And I saw this horror all around me. And I've had the privilege to have lunch with no fewer than a dozen Holocaust survivors as well. And hearing their stories. And you think, where is a loving, just God in all of this? And it really did put my faith on the ropes, really. And yet, it's also the same place where I found God's love as well, in a very ironic sense. In Auschwitz 1, in Block 12, there was a prison. And the fact that there was a prison inside a prison itself is still a moment which baffles the mind. But it's the place where Maximilian Kolbe was martyred. And inside that prison, on the inside of one of these wooden cell doors, whether it was somebody who was inspired by Maximilian Kolbe, maybe was in the same cell as him, or maybe didn't even know him at all. Whoever this person was, they etched out with their fingernails into the door an image of Christ holding his Sacred Heart. And in all of that mess, in a place where you was dehumanized before being killed, and somebody in all of that still managed to etch out an image of Christ holding his Sacred Heart. If they had faith when they knew death was imminent, that their entire life had been stripped away, was probably starved for the past 4 weeks, I once again found God's love in a very strange place. That in the darkest moments of my life, and God willing, it will never be as dark as what that person encountered. God is there. And so, no, I can't predict what will happen in the future. And I know that there'll be personal struggles in my own life. It's inevitable. But I'll always look back at that moment and know that God is with me. So even when that flame is as small as it can be, it will still be burning. And I'll know somewhere down the road it will grow again.
Make a comment on Rabbi Hugo Gryn. I remember listening to him. It was one of the Today programs, Gobslop, 8 o'clock. He spoke about Auschwitz, spoke about what you have spoken about, Father. And he made a very powerful statement about himself in Auschwitz. I believed that God was dead. powerful.
Yeah.
It's about you, it's not about me. You spoke movingly about vocation and also being at quite a young age, that is important. I felt the old man fingering my collar when I was 8 years old. Vocation changes, and as long as it keeps changing, it's good. It's when it stops, you may need to ask a question.
And yeah, I hope I've got a wise enough head on my shoulders to realize that this isn't the final point. It never will be. It's the start of something new, as opposed to the end of. But yeah, it's John Henry Newman to change often. And I think that's something which is not just true of the lives of priests, it's true for all of us here in this meeting, in our churches, and in our world. We change. And why do we change? Because we have, at least my understanding is, we have the Holy Spirit within us. And he calls us into different things, into different times and different seasons. And some of it will be corporate, and some of it will be individual. And I think that's wonderful. That we're all called into an individual and a shared experience.
I might reflect something from my selection conference, which was a long, long time ago when I was 18. And I went to St Albans, a place I'd never been to before and haven't been to since. But it was, as I think you found, Father, it's 3 very positive days in many ways. But I can always remember on the last day before we went our separate ways, the guy in charge of Cactum, as it was then, which was a selection conference organisation, he said, remember please that some of you we do not think are called to be priests, but remember please what you're being called to is the hardest thing. I've always remembered that. I thought, yes, in some ways priests are very privileged, and we're spared some of the things that the good folk who aren't priests encounter. But that's put the mockers on things, hasn't it? But I would say thank you to Father for that, and it's brought back many experiences in my life as well as you spoke. And I think the other thing to say is that we are richly blessed having you with us.
Indeed.
And we want to take this opportunity to wish you every blessing in your life as a priest.
The night before I was ordained to the diaconate, we were all interviewed first by the bishop and then by the retreat conductor. And the retreat conductor in my case was a man called David Tuck, who was the vicar of Pinner in North London. And I decided I was going to open my heart to him in one of those melodramatic bursts that you're all quite used to by now. And he stopped me by just putting his hand up like that. And I'm finally, you know, tailed away. And he said, please, please get it into your head. God is only ordaining you to holy orders because he can't trust you to be a layperson. I think it is far harder. I think it is far harder to be a layperson than it is to be a priest. I think to live the Christian life of faith and being resolute and cheerful and compassionate and forgiving amidst the stresses and strains of the world in which we live is a major achievement. And I'm not sure I would do it very well without the grace of orders. That's probably because, yes, okay, I'm called to that and that's fine. But I honestly believe that what David Tuck said was true. Could God trust me to be a faithful disciple without having the extra motivation of holy orders? Well, there's an element of truth in it, which I've always clung on to in those moments when I've been tempted to think too much of myself. The power and the strength of priests derives entirely from the laity they serve, because that is where God is to be found. And without people, priests are nothing. There's no point. And I'm really looking forward to the 19th. I'm looking forward to having a new priest colleague who I know is going to bring great credit to the priesthood and to Jesus Christ. Joining a very interesting band here in our parishes, and someone who, in the midst of all that we've endured over the last few months, the lack of contact which Father Ross spoke about, has still managed to find his way into people's hearts in a quite remarkable way, without any of the advantages of face-to-face meetings. And it is absolutely right and just that he is ordained priest. And then the journey really begins, because you never stop learning. Never. Ordained, lay, don't matter. We never stop learning. Huge thanks, Father Ross. And of course, our prayers and blessings. Can I give 2 parish notices?
Yes.
One is a book recommendation. And I only picked this up yesterday, and I found it very difficult to put it down as I was reading it last night. And it's from an unlikely source, but I think this man is brilliant. It is a book by the comedian Frank Skinner, and it is called A Comedian's Prayer Book. Please read it, it will change your life. It is quite spectacular, and I wish I could pray like that. That's the first thing. Have you got it, Verity? It's fabulous. That's the first thing. And secondly, in association with Jill Fenner Enterprises, PLC, I want to, and she has, bless her, just jogged my memory, as I asked her to when we spoke this afternoon. We don't just throw this together, you know. We are, as you will remember from last week, very keen to recruit volunteers for the work of the Lifeboat Project. We have various ideas as to how this work can become not only a place where people give and receive, but where people can also come and just be listened to. When lockdown finally departs and we can actually make people cups of tea and give people slices of cake, first of all, you can be sure that I will be there permanently, because I've never turned down a piece of cake in my life. But more to the point, a place where you heard last week how people often come and just sit down and cry because of the circumstances they're in. Well, we want to try and listen to some of that and try and provide a place where people can just be. And Jill's been having some preliminary conversations with the diocese about how we go about that. And, you know, maybe by summer, autumn, that's something we would think about being able to do. But in order to make it happen, we need volunteers. Volunteers who'd be at home, stood behind a kitchen hatch making tea. And that's practically all of us, I would guess. Volunteers who could sit with people and listen to their stories. Because everybody's got a story, as Father Ross said, and all of them are valuable to God. And some of them are incredibly painful. So if you want to know any more about that, please speak to Jill or Father Ross, Father Tony, or myself, and we will work through, you know, how that's going to work out. But just expressions of interest, tell me more, that's all absolutely fine. And if we give you any more information, just shout. But we are deadly serious about this. We could do with a whole roster of volunteers from across our 3 parishes. There are already some volunteers who don't worship with us, who aren't part of the church, but they come and because they believe in it. And that's an incredible thing too. And maybe we can learn from that. But have a think about it. Have a think about what you might be able to do. And please speak to us. Otherwise, we start the process of emotional blackmail. And I've got something on all of you. I've been here long enough now. I've got something on absolutely everybody I'm looking at. So, you know, just there's an easy way and there's a hard way. That's all I'm saying. All right. I feel quite teary. Thank you, Father Ross. I love to cry at weddings. Any more before we go and do something else? What a great night. I thank you. That's been absolutely wonderful. And are we meeting next week, Father Ross? I can't remember, because it's half term and I'm going away and it's all very inconvenient, really.
Do we give it a break? Well, I mean, what do people
What do
think?
people want to do? Because, I mean, if Father Tony has a license, so it's possible to do it, but you need to decide whether you want a half-term break or not.
We're away and Ruth's away, so we're unlikely to join.
Okay, thank you. Any more? Who'd like to meet? And there was Beryl, Pat, Jill, and there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Father Tony, well, all right, all I will say is one of you is going to have to lead it. Okay. So I want a volunteer on my, as it were, on my desk, not physically, just a name on my desk by Thursday. And I will do the circulating. Father Tony will send me the Zoom link and I'll circulate it out. And I will tell them that Pat Lockett is going to be talking about the virtuoso with the romantic era, with examples from the bass tuba repertoire of the, no? Okay, maybe not. Thought that was your specialist subject. But please have a think. And if there's something, whatever it is that you might contribute, even just as a starter to a conversation, that would be great. All right. it's wonderful to see you all. I echo what Father Ross says about this group. It's quite spectacular. And it's been a real saving grace, and I know will continue to be so. And I shall miss you next week when I'm trolling around the New Forest and the Isle of Wight and all those sorts of places. I will. Don't shake your head, Mrs. Cox. That's an absolute disgrace. What a
Come
scandalous.
see my nephew. He lives on the Isle of Wight.
Oh, right. Okay, fine. Give me the address. I'll be there.
As long as they've got cake.
As long as they've got cake. Good point. Well made, Beryl. Yeah, not unreasonable. All right. Bless you and thank you again. And I'll see you in a fortnight. Others will be gathering next week. That's lovely. All right. Bless you. Take care.
That's all.
Bye.
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 Bye.